is this film for? And who is this film really about? Because I'm questioning whether or not it's really about Amy Winehouse. Hey friends, so I just watched Back to Black, which is a biopic about Amy Winehouse, and I have a lot of things to say. I did a full spoiler-free review, so if you do want this without spoilers, you can check that out. But this one, we're going to be getting into spoilers, which means I'm just going to be going in a little bit more into scenes specifically and talking about some of the moments in the film directly and the way that they depicted certain characters, as well as Amy and her career and her relationships to a lot of people. Some people got kind of cut out of this film, you know? So the film actually, I would say, started out kind of promising. We start sort of with young Amy here. She is just starting out and writing music and is this sweet, I mean, kind of sweet, kind of sassy, kind of still the bad girl character, but there's sides to her. I think as this film goes on, we lose dimension in Amy so much as time passes. It's like the further along she gets in her career, the more dimensions we lose to her. And when it starts off, we don't even really have that many layers, I would say. I would say there's maybe like 3 layers to her, but at least there's something there. I did like kind of how they depicted her in the beginning. I thought that that was the part that felt the most accurate to me in regards to the entire film. Something that I felt like they kind of nailed in terms of a tone was Amy's sassiness and just her certainty and who she was and what she wanted for her music career and her ability to just call people out. Although I don't think we went into it as much as we could have, because I do think that was a really amazing side of Amy that was really interesting, and we just didn't touch on it as much as I'd liked. But it is shown really early on in the film. So we basically have this amazing phone call where Amy is in bed and she's woken up by a phone call, and she answers the phone, and it's 19 management, and they basically heard her demo and they're interested in her. And she just basically tells them off, and she's like, well, I don't know if I'm interested in you because, you know, I'm not a Spice Girl. And to me, these are powerful women, these amazing musical icons, and I don't just want to be like a pop sensation. And I loved that phone call. I thought it was so brilliant, and it just felt so Amy. And so that was one thing that they nailed. And then, like I said, it gets bad for me. I felt the film just really derailed when her career starts to take off. There's really no complexity in the way that it explores any character, Amy included, as this goes on. How much Blake is painted as kind of this good, well-meaning guy in this just felt wrong. And I know that Blake probably did really love Amy. I'm not saying that there wasn't good sides to him that we could show. I think it would be fascinating to show both sides of a character. This film seems to pick like one element of a character and then just show you that. And so with Blake, we get a lot of the playfulness of Blake's character and kind of why Amy is drawn to him, but we don't get the darker sides. I mean, they do show his own substance issues in the film, but they don't show, I think, the effects that had on Amy as much, which is a disservice to the character. We're going to get into that a little bit more. They definitely do some weird things with Mitch as well. There's a bunch of parts to Mitch that I feel like they just cut from this film in terms of how manipulative he could be. I'm sure he did love his daughter, but that doesn't change some of the things that he did throughout her career that were just exploitive. You know what I mean? And I also felt there was this weird angle with Amy being like really baby crazy in this. I don't know if that was a huge thing in her life, so feel free to correct me if I'm wrong there. I am pretty familiar with Amy's story. I did watch the documentary in 2015. I've loved Amy's music ever since I was a teenager. I love Amy Winehouse, and I feel like her music was on a different plane of existence. She is a vocalist that I don't think we'll ever see the likes of again, just in terms of what she did with her music and how moving it is. It's just something unique. There was something so unique about her. So the 2015 documentary, Amy, if you haven't seen that, I would recommend you go watch it. There is a lot more that it gets into in terms of her life, and I just feel like it gives you a more full picture, whereas this is kind of just specific snapshots of specific things to sort of make a story that isn't really truthful, I don't think, to what Amy's life was, because it just is one note. It's like, instead of giving us a whole song that is a character, we're getting like the starting note of that song. And one of the things that I thought was weird that I don't remember really coming up a lot, but like I said, correct me if I'm wrong, was just how baby crazy she is in this. I mean, I'm sure Amy did want kids someday. She may have mentioned that before, I don't know, but they made it seem like near the end of the movie, as her career takes off, it's like she's just obsessed with like retiring and like becoming a mom. And I was like, I think Amy really loved music. I feel like we don't talk about that enough. I feel like we also don't dive into Amy's loneliness enough. Like we do talk about, I think, these feelings that she has of kind of being alone and sort of what drives her towards, you know, drinking and all of that stuff. But I don't think we truly explore why it existed or why it persisted. I think something that's interesting is we kind of get the wash of celebrity with this film. We don't really get the depth of what it means to be a celebrity. It's like, well, celebrity is to blame. And I'm like, sure, but like, what does that mean? And they're like, well, you know, celebrity. And I'm like, right, but like, use it in a sentence, like define celebrity. And we don't really talk about that or talk about why those issues come about. I think, to me, as someone that has also struggled with, you know, my mental health throughout the years, I am a person, I think a lot of people are like this, especially performers. You just kind of will have these moments where you feel like you can be in a room full of people and you feel completely alone, like no one really sees you or really gets you, and you just want people to see you and love you. I think a lot of the times as a performer, what we crave is we just crave to be seen and accepted. And it comes from a place, I think, an insecurity within ourselves of us feeling like we don't belong in the world. And people that feel that, I think, really strongly tend to make some of the best performers, because you are trying to build connections so hard. You do connect with a lot of people, but then the tragedy of that is some people never really get to feel like that connection was meaningful. And so I think for Amy, that could have been a place where it came from. Obviously, I don't want to psychoanalyze her because, you know, I never knew her personally, but I saw elements of that in her story that I just feel like could have been true, and none of that is explored in this movie. We don't even explore like what it could be. That's not one of the options we're given, because we're not given an option at all, it feels like. Even when the film does go into some of the real stuff that happened in her life that was quite serious, it feels blatant at times and very on the nose. Like, there's just certain things in the script, the way people talk to each other, where it feels like this is more of a bullet point in like points that we have to hit for Amy's life story, as opposed to two people actually having a real conversation. And I don't think it has to do so much with the performances as it does just the script. Like, the script for this at times just feels really like blech, because it is so obvious. Like, there's just things that are so obvious, and then people say it and you're like, wow, is this really how this is going? And there are certain scenes as well that just go on too long. I would say one of those scenes being the scene with Blake and Amy when they meet. Like, that feels like it was a whole day. And I was like, what is going on? This scene just doesn't end. And it's a great scene, even though it's very long. But I would say you just cut that down and take a few of the best moments and then make that the scene. It doesn't have to be so long. And as well, when she says goodbye to her Nan for the last time, that scene is very long. And I loved what they did with her Nan, but I just felt like we get it. Like, we understand. It would have actually been more meaningful if I didn't see that scene and I more saw the impact that the loss had on her. I feel like we actually gloss over her Nan's funeral and all of that, when it seems like that may have been a thing that really impacted Amy in her life and put her in more of a tragic or a bad place after the loss of her Nan. But we don't really I don't know, we kind of feels like we skip it a bit. It's more the mourning of her while she's still alive, as opposed to the mourning of her after she's gone. For some other scenes that feel like they're just kind of like, what's going on with this scene, I would also say when Blake and Amy have their breakup scene in the prison, when Amy comes to visit him and he explains to her what codependency is. Now, obviously, Blake did basically say he thought he and Amy weren't good and that's why they ultimately split up. But just the idea of being like, well, my therapist explained to me what codependency is, I'm just like, I don't know if this is how this conversation would go. I mean, I don't know what that's based on, if that's based on something that Blake said exactly happened, but it didn't feel real to me. I'll tell you that. I wasn't buying it. We also don't really go very much into the making of her music. I feel like Frank is there. Back to Black is there. We have these big albums. We go into some inspirations for some songs. Lady Boy. Maybe Back to Black. But the rest of it, relatively lacking. we just kind of gloss over a lot of the writing process and the making of the music. This film feels mostly like a flash in the pan, like it's a bunch of really pretty performances, which I will say I think were actually quite well done and filmed, that are strung together, though, just between the roller coaster that is Amy's tragic life. And it's a little hard to watch at times, and it just feels so surface level. I'm disappointed. I'm clearly very disappointed in this movie. Some things that we really gloss over are some of the biggest moments, I would say, in Amy's career, like working with Mark Ronson, her duet with Tony Bennett. None of that is in there, and I just feel like this film is talking about the successful moments in Amy's life as defined by someone else, not as defined by Amy, because I don't think to Amy, her, like, you know, becoming number one or, like, getting to the US was really what she cared as much about. I think she was just more interested in making good music and getting to work with other legends and becoming a legend in and of herself. She just wanted to make music and I think feel seen and feel like people could connect with her music. That was what was important to her. She literally says it in the film. We don't really show it. It's just something that she says. There's a lot of stuff in this movie that feels like there's things that people say, but then we don't really show any of it. It's very much a tell, don't show kind of film, which I think, as most people would agree, is not the strongest way to do a film. You know, we always say show, don't tell in acting, and this is definitely more of a tell, don't show. Just so much is left out, including personal stuff as well, including, you know, how she got into substances, especially harder substances. We don't talk about that at all. She just basically wakes up one day, it feels like, and she's like, you know what? Today, I'm gonna just get a pipe and I'm gonna be smoking some of that, you know? And I was like, I don't think that's how you get into a substance that is that hard, especially when we also showed the side of Amy that I think was against harder substances, and I do think that was part of Amy's story, but there's a shift there, and we skipped the shift. And the shift, admittedly, according even to himself, is Blake. Blake is the one that introduced her to those substances, and not to say that, you know, he's completely to blame, because obviously I think Amy did live her life saying, this is the thing I want to do, I'm going to do it, but I definitely think she maybe felt pressured both by everything else that was happening around her, but also by the people in her life like Blake, who was into that stuff, to get into it, and it just kind of carried her away. We also don't really get as much into her infidelity, her affairs. It's kind of alluded to earlier on in the film that Amy's a little bit more like loose, like she doesn't really like to define things too much. She kind of has this hunger for men almost, like she definitely likes to see multiple people. And I thought that was kind of cool that they put that in there. But what I wasn't a fan of was the fact that later on in the film, the only thing that we see is when her and Blake break it off, it's only really brought up then that he's like, you know, I saw you with someone else. And it also feels like it's not really justified, and he's being overly jealous, but also jealousy was a huge thing in their relationship, I think, as well. And I also think infidelity was a huge thing in their relationship, and we don't talk about it. And I feel like even from Amy's music, you get a sense of the fact that maybe she struggled to be faithful with people. Or maybe, you know, I think for Amy, maybe that just wasn't the way that she was meant to live. And I think that she just needed to, it was an earlier time. I don't know if polyamory was as prominent as it is now, or as accepted as it is now maybe in the world. So I feel like that could have been a good avenue for Amy if she had just found like a partner that wanted to support her in that way. But I also feel like therapy could have helped her, but she was very much not into that apparently. So it's hard to say what could have happened, because this is what did happen. But the film definitely doesn't go into any of that. The music is the only thing that I would say that is good about this film. I think, while no one is obviously Amy Winehouse, and I wasn't expecting that because I don't think we'll ever see a performer like Amy again, I think Marissa Arabella does a pretty good job with the vocals and trying to also embody who Amy was. Like, I think, honestly, Marissa Arabella understood Amy better than this film understood Amy. I think that she got her sassiness, at least had a few moments where she got to showcase it a little bit. And I do think her mannerisms she completely nailed. But there's just not a lot that she's given here, which is unfortunate, because I do think she's quite good. But it's just disappointing that we didn't choose to do much with it. We don't even get to show, I think, really as much the duality of Amy, which I think is this sense that she was a seemingly confident person, but I think a lot of it was also to mask some of the insecurity that she felt within herself that you sometimes see kind of shine through. And that loneliness. And I think that that was the part that we kind of cut corners around a lot. Overall, I would say I think the performances are pretty solid with what people were given. But the fact of the matter is that I just feel like this story was very inaccurate in terms of the way that it represented a lot of people, especially Mitch. I would say if, you know, what's this film really about? I feel like it's supposed to be her dad, Mitch's redemption story. But at the same time, anyone that knows Amy's story is not going to buy it. So it just feels bizarre because I'm like, why are you trying to give this person a redemption story when it would be better for you to show maybe the two sides to that character? Like, maybe Mitch really did love his daughter, but he also made some bad choices because he enjoyed the lifestyle that she could provide when she was famous. I don't know. I think you could have both of those things, but instead the film just tries to do one and paint him in this like almost saintly light, and it's just not real. It's just so disrespectful to Amy and her spirit, and I'm like beyond disappointed in this movie. But, you know, the 2015 documentary is still there. If you would like to go watch it, I would definitely say go check it out. I think it's great. It's a great documentary, and it really does, I think, give a fuller picture of Amy's life. And I think it also dives in a lot to like who Amy Winehouse was and what was important to her in life. So, yeah, that is there for you. I don't think we needed this film. I wish that it kind of didn't exist, but it does. So, and you know what? Maybe you liked it. If you liked it, let me know what you liked about it. If you didn't like it, let me know what you didn't like about it, what worked for you, what didn't. Overall, I got to give this one 1 out of 5 stars because it just, you know, I'm giving it 1 for the attempt with the music and with the performance for Amy that Arabella gives us, because I do think she tried a lot. But yeah, I just can't. This story is brutal. It's brutal to watch. That's it for me on this one, friends. Thank you so much for watching. I know this isn't the most nerdiest content, but I do really love Amy Winehouse, so I hope you enjoyed this review. And of course, until next time, as always, do stay nerdy. Bye!